Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead of them and their companies. I'm your host, Olivia Sammons, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories behind successful startups, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're excited to have Emilia D'Anzica, the founder of Emelia Speaks CX and the previous founder and CEO of Growth Molecules, joining us. Emilia will be sharing more about her founding story and giving us a glimpse into the plans for future growth. So let's jump straight in. Emilia, welcome to Founders Future.
Olivia, thanks for having me.
It's awesome. Such a pleasure having you here. So let's start at the beginning. Take us back to what specific problem inspired you to start Emelia Speaks CS.
All right. It's a fairly new company. I am a recent founder of the company, given that I was leading Growth Molecules for 4.5 years before that. It was recently acquired by Helix, and then the Academy portion was acquired by SBI Growth. So I wanted to keep consulting, but really on my own versus leading a team. And currently through my practice, I am an instructor at Booth Business School in Chicago. And then I am also privately consulting with companies who need support with their B2B strategy and customer experience.
Awesome. So we touched along your background a little bit there. So what experiences influenced you in your approach to business in the startup?
I've really spent 25 years of my career in Silicon Valley working with startups. I was the 9th employee at Jobvite, which was eventually acquired with WalkMe. I was one of their first employees when they set up their company in the US, Israeli based, and they went public. And then when I started Growth Molecules, I worked with hundreds of companies along with my organization. And so that constant building level or that growth period is really where I have realized that's my expertise. I'm a person who likes to grow, especially if you have a slim budget. I like to get really creative around how can we blow this up without blowing up a budget.
Awesome, incredible. And I suppose within that journey and moving through the company and then starting this new one coming through as well, have you faced any challenges along the way that you thought, oh, I'm not going to do this and nearly given up? And how did you push through it?
I think different cultures, different people, different expectations always creates a challenge when you're building a company. And so really, how do you get around that is setting up really clear expectations. So I never write a statement of work without really discussing with everyone who's going to be involved, what does success look like in 6 weeks or 3 months or a year from now? And then us all signing off on that and keeping to that scope, because very quickly there can be misexpectations, there can be scope creep. And so making sure that you set up very early in the relationship before any document is signed, what does success look like, has really helped with any misunderstanding, especially when you have companies now very global, different cultures, different communication styles. It has to be in writing. I think that's first and foremost. And then secondly, you can't be good at everything. If you try to be, I feel, at least for myself, I'm mediocre or I spread myself too thin and I burn out. And so it's really just important that you surround yourself with really smart people and decide what are you really good at, focus on that, and then outsource or give others who have different expertise than you the opportunity to shine in their own ways. So for me, I didn't want to do all the financial management and operations behind that. That was one of my first hires. Make sure you hire someone who really knows how to scale that part of the business so that I could focus on the customer experience.
Yeah, 100% focusing on what you do best and what you know best is key to priority and key to growth. I completely get where you're coming from. Now, Growth Molecules were around 4 years, no? Was the company started back then? And talk us through a little bit about the module and the offer evaluation that you have there.
Yeah, when I started it, it was August of 2020, thick of the world being shut down. And B2B, business to business software as a service was really going through a crisis, a re-identification of the goals for every company. And I live in Sonoma County. I have quite a bit of dirt. I plant all my own seeds and food throughout the year. And I was in the dirt thinking about, wow, this seed I'm dropping in the dirt is going to grow exponentially and create food for my family. So I went and Googled what the word growth molecules means. And I said, that's the name of my company. And so I went and got it trademarked. The lawyer said, you can't trademark, that's a scientific term. And I said, watch me. And then I built a company. First, I started an advisory firm, strictly advising companies. And I realized I can't do this alone. There's so many companies right now that need help. And so I surrounded myself with smart people who had done similar roles before. And then we expanded into education. So we started an academy. And then last but very important is the tech piece.
Yeah.
So which are the best technologies that companies need to create an incredible customer experience? So I three arms to the company growth molecules, and it's really helped the company. It's still going strong. Just I'm no longer heading the company, but I am an evangelist still for the brand. The company helps the whole customer experience, the whole journey. Once a customer says, I'm committing for a month or I'm committing for a year, multi-year deals, how do you ensure that customer keeps renewing? And that's really what growth molecules does.
Awesome. And then it all started in the thick of COVID.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge and a struggle in itself. Um,
Yes.
so with that being said, and as you say, retaining and reoccurring customers is the word I would use, is a big impact on growth and on scale. But how did you go about acquiring customers in the first place? What channels and methods have you found most effective?
I built a website. It was very elementary. I'll be honest, I went to a website that I could just hire someone and put out a job description. And I hired an MIT kid who did a good enough job and taught me how to use WordPress. And that was like really the beginning. And Square was my first customer. They hired me. And I have to say, this professional who built the website put in really good SEO. So make sure you know what your keywords are and make sure your website has good search engine optimization. And then if you aren't good at outward selling and doing those kind of things, your company has a product that can help with that. Again, you have to supplement and surround yourself with tech and people to help you because not everyone wants to do outbound selling. For me, I love writing. So I wrote a lot of blogs. I wrote a lot about customer success. And I committed to myself that I would post on LinkedIn at least 3 times a week, which I'm taking a slight break right now. It was spring break here in our area. So spent some time with my family, but typically I try really hard to publish 3 times a week on anything customer experience that I feel is relevant and can help other companies. I think that's always been really helpful. Of course, networking, doing incredible work, and then asking your clients, is there anyone else who can benefit from the experience you just went through? And it can be expansion within that organization or another company that might be a good client for you.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just finding the right avenues and the right niche for you. I say you don't always enjoy the cold outreach and the reaches that you have to acquire, but you've got to get there someday and scale the business through different aspects. So talk to us a little about how the team is structured. I know you're not currently there and it may have
Mhm.
changed, but what does that look like? What particular sales formations and structures do you have in place? How does the marketing function look?
Yeah, so HubSpot is the marketing hub. I think it's important to have someone who knows how to use it, especially for marketing purposes, newsletters, all the things. And then I was the managing partner at the company, but I had a managing director, Sabina Pons. She's now the CCO and CEO. very happy that she's taken on that role. And we essentially did all the outbound and selling. We were speaking at all the conferences. We were writing the majority of blogs. Our head of education, the academy, Annie Stefano, was writing a lot of the education thought leadership. And we were out there all the time, whether it's on LinkedIn or once the world opened up in person. And then the rest were really doers, like really experts in their fields. The advisors, we had a group of advisors that did all of the assessments and then the technical pieces like the customer success platform implementations. We really had people, and they still do, that are certified in the products. I think it's really important. And we're in a really special time right now with artificial intelligence, and that you no longer have to do all those things that are so cumbersome. And you just think about the limited time each person has. Studies show that we're productive about 6 hours a day at work. So if you
Yeah.
only have 6 hours, why aren't you leveraging artificial intelligence technology to help business, to help your company grow? And I think that is one thing I embraced early. I look at some of the competitors out there. I worked for some of them before I started my own firm. And that was one thing I was not willing to compromise, and that's investing in tech.
Yeah, as you say, and also with the evolution and with the resources that AI can give us, it seems like a no-brainer to implement and save time. There'll be a lot of listeners out there which will resonate with the fact that time is the biggest resource when coming to a company. There's only one of you and one of you to move forward. Now, with that being said, as you see the industry evolving, SaaS tech world, even within the coaching and consulting, where do you see yourself and I suppose the companies that you're growing positioned in that?
I really, my expertise and what I'm most passionate about is inspiring and motivating people and companies and having hard conversations. So I think really looking at companies and helping them identify what's that one thing that could move the needle. All too often, I see companies have way too many goals for the year and spread people too thin. And one major burnout, people become frozen. They don't know which goal to focus on. And the result is poor quality. And so really having very set goals and achieving one and then building on that goal and then going higher and higher. And I think that's the biggest thing is people just give up too soon, or they fire people, or they have too many goals. They blame everything but themselves or what's really going on in the organization. I see it over and over again. So I just really want to focus on working with executives at the C level and helping them identify what's really going to move the needle. Because if you're not focused on that, then everything else is noise.
Yeah, 100%. And then I suppose while you was growing growth molecules, that's a mouthful. Did you encounter like what was the biggest bottleneck you encountered in while you were scaling?
Yeah, I had a coach. I hired a coach through Bolster, and it was really beneficial. I think the biggest challenge we had scaling was we were in a very good position. We had so much work. It was how do you balance the work across all the different people and make sure that we're delivering on time and continuing to keep the pipeline full. I think that's probably was our biggest challenge. And tech had to play a role. We just really had to double down on the automation of the marketing. I think that was critical for scale.
Yeah, okay, that makes complete sense. And then in terms of automation, was these set up to roll out straight to B2B, no? So it was in a sense saving time and effort all around.
100%. The newsletter that goes out like clockwork every Tuesday at 10 a.m. for the individual's time. The download of any ebook, automatically 6 emails are set up. Any interest on LinkedIn, how is that followed up on? All of those different things, very calculated. so that time is not lost, because there's so many studies that show this. A company reaches out to three vendors. It's the ones who get back and are very proactive that typically win.
Yeah, 100%. And again, as AI develops and grows through that and makes its way into the SaaS industry itself, the automations and the time saved are only going to get bigger and bigger. So, with that being said, what is one tool or resource that would be a big game changer within the company at the moment?
I think right now, as I'm building, and my website's one page right now, I think it's really honing in on your expertise and then building, putting the work up front and then automating as much as you can after that, because especially if you're a company of one, how are you going to how are you going to spend your time most wisely to have the biggest benefit for your client and help you grow your company financially? So I think that's really important. Too often, people don't put the work up front and then they expect benefits in return and then they give up. I think that's the biggest challenge that consultants and coaches have.
Yeah, and there seems to be a running theme of time as a resource throughout this whole pod at the moment. So, what's the best piece of advice that you've received about scaling a business?
Focus. When we were starting, we were trying to do too many things. So people would ask us, will you come be an MC? Will you come build these events? Will you do this random project? And we had to start saying no and really focus on the three pillars: teaching, advisory, or tech. And that's all we do. And the rest is we make recommendations to other consultants, knowing that they'll recommend us when it's not their sweet spot. And that was really hard to do, especially in customer experience. We are people pleasers.
Yeah.
We want to say yes to everything. And that's a disservice not only to our business, but to our families, because we should be that rejuvenation time, that rest time really helps you stay focused when you are at work.
Yeah, 100%. You have to look at sports and athletes and professionals in that side of things and how much they emphasize and make sure their body is rested and recovered. It should be applied and the same throughout.
Yes, Olivia, building on that, my morning and the gym is a non-negotiable. My partner's in charge of everything at home until I get back at 7:30 a.m. because that time to really focus on me, there's no email, there are no distractions. There's either a class and definitely loud music and physical activities so that I can be my best self. And too often I see this with coaches, they neglect themselves, and then that starts to show in your business.
Yeah, 100%. And now, what advice would you give to any founders listening that are looking to start on their own journey at the moment?
Have a plan. I definitely wrote a business plan when I started. There are a lot of dreamers out there, but they don't act. And that's what's the difference between successful people and people who stay at their jobs, they're miserable, they complain a lot, but they aren't acting. And so by writing it down, you're one step closer to making that dream a reality. And you have to believe in yourself, because being a founder is a lonely job. And a lot of times you are listening to people complain. If there's any client issue, guess whose fault it is. And so you really have to be there. And some of the things that have been said to me, when stories are turned around, you have to have a straight face and have those difficult conversations with yourself and the clients. And I think it's really important. You have to believe in yourself and act. And that's the difference between success and failure.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And that's a wrap on another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank you, Emilia, for sharing your incredible journey and insight with us today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future via whatever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales and marketing efforts through world-class systems and playbooks. Until then, keep climbing, and we will see you on the next one.